and we are ready when you are.
Alright. Hello, today I'll be talking about our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. First off, who has been to Washington, D.C.? I feel like 2 people. Alright, second off, everybody knows that Washington, D.C., like Iwo Jima Memorial with all soldiers holding the flags and like Capitol Building and all that stuff, so everybody knows about it. But has anybody ever thought why Washington, D.C. was our capital? No, just me. Okay. And alright. I have always wondered about it, but I was never taught why. I might have been taught why in high school, but come on, who paid attention in high school? When I saw the documentary Patriocracy, I started thinking about why Washington, D.C. was our capital again, and it sparked my interest, and I thought I better find out. After watching the documentary, I started doing some research. Today I would like to explain my findings to you all. First off, I will start with a little history on the early United States and then tell you guys about why Washington, D.C. is our nation's capital and how it became our capital, then end with some more history. So like a history sandwich, pretty much. First, I would like to talk about some history of the early United States. Our nation was founded on July 4th, 1776. Hopefully everybody knows that. This happened after a representative from each of the 13 colonies got fed up with Great Britain and their policies. So they decided to create the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was written by Thomas Jefferson and sent to King George. Obviously, Great Britain was appalled by this and went to war with the newly independent colonies. The colonies came together to fight Great Britain and were led by General George Washington. We all know the colonies won the war, later known as the Revolutionary War. During the war, the Articles of Confederation held the government together. The Articles of Confederation held more state power than federal power, and when they proved too weak and impossible to use, a new constitution was adopted. The Constitution was opposite and held more federal power than state power. Under the Constitution, they needed a leader to unite all the colonies. They chose General George Washington to become the nation's first president. This was the start of a strong national government. So if you've been listening, during that 14 years, our nation did not have a capital or anywhere for the nation's leaders to meet. Between 1776, when our nation was founded, and 1800, Congress met in various locations. First, President Washington took office in New York. Then in 1792, when he was reelected, Congress moved the capital to Philadelphia. By now, the 13 states and the government were looking for a more permanent place to meet. James Madison was the first person to see the need for a capital or federal district. An attack on Congress at Philadelphia, known as the Pennsylvania Mutiny, made Madison realize the need for government security. According to Henry Graff, on January 23, 1788, James Madison argued that the national capital needed to be distinct from the states in order to provide for its own maintenance and safety. Once fully brought to the government's attention, Congress added a section to the Constitution that would establish a federal capital. However, the Constitution did not include a location for the capital. This caused a national controversy, and people were divided on where the capital should reside. Some states thought it should reside in their state, and others thought it should reside in the north or the south. When I think of Washington, D.C., I think of it being more in the north. It's kind of higher up by Pennsylvania and stuff. But they thought that was in the south. I don't know why. And so obviously they chose the south. And this was because of the National Bank of the United States. The National Bank of the United States was one of the first major buildings in America, and it was located in Philadelphia, or the north. James Hamilton was the head of the bank, and his policies encouraged the bulk of economic power in the hands of bankers, financiers, and merchants, who mainly resided in the Northeast. This made many of the southern colonies feel left out and weak. Therefore, President George Washington wanted to pick a political capital that would be in the south with a more agricultural region differing from those economic elites. Because of this controversial issue, it took so long for a permanent site of the new federal government. Of course, a lot of people suggested possible locations, but there was no compromises until July 16, 1790. According to the Historical Society of Washington, D.C., this compromise, known as the Compromise of 1790, included James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and Thomas Jefferson, who came to an agreement that the federal government would assume war debt carried by the states on the condition that the new national capital be located in the South. This made Hamilton and the bank happy, so they didn't have to pay the debt off, and it made the South happy because they felt like they had more power. Once they reached the conclusion, the Residence Act was put into action. The Residence Act provided the location for the new permanent capital. It was located on the Potomac River, and President George Washington would choose the exact area. Washington picked a 10 square mile area of land from property between Maryland and Virginia that lay on both sides of the Potomac River. The capital was designed. George Washington asked French architect and engineer Pierre F. Font to design the new capital. The capital was designed in a different pattern from every other city in the world. Pierre and Washington wanted a city that would stop people from attacking its government. So Pierre designed a city with parallel roads, well, like a grid system, like how Arizona is, but then they had roads like going in 45-degree angles so that people couldn't block roads and stuff, so they couldn't stop government uprisings. This is now the ideal layout for cities, but it's not really. Everybody builds like a grid system for the seasons, except in the East Coast. Anyways, the first time Congress met in the new capital of Washington, D.C. was on November 17, 1800. The full transfer of the federal government from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. was completed by June of 1801. George Washington's vision of a capital overlooking a hill around the Potomac still stays with us today. And did you know that George Washington never actually lived in Washington, D.C.? The district he picked out, the district he planned, and the district named after him. This was because he retired in 1779 and the capital was not finished till 1800. Also, the mansion they built, he never lived in there. The first president was John Adams, but only for a year, and then Thomas Jefferson came along and lived in it for 4 years. His mansion is now known as the White House. To finish, now we all know more about our nation's capital, one of the symbols of America. Choosing the capital site was not just random, it was a balance of powers. It represents what America stands for, freedom and compromise. Choosing Washington, D.C. as the capital serves as a symbol of one of the greatest compromises in America. Thank you.